Hey there guys, JustSomeCritic here to talk about some stuff. Today I was wanting to do my first Bookworm review, and for that one I decided to go with a fairly new released book. It's been released about a little over a week now. It'll be 2 weeks this Tuesday, I believe.
Dead Heat is the fourth installment in the Alpha and Omega series by Patricia Briggs and features two prominent werewolf characters, Charles and Anna.
But first, a little backstory.
The Alpha and Omega series actually starts off in the initial Mercy Thompson series, in the first book titled Moon Called. During the course of events, because of some problems caused by werewolves, Charles is forced to go to the city of Chicago to discover the source of the problem. The events of this trip are recorded in the short story Alpha and Omega, featured in the anthology book On the Prowl. In this story, Charles meets Anna, a werewolf who is being abused by her pack, with whom he ends up developing a romantic interest. In the follow-up full-length novel Cry Wolf, Anna returns with Charles to his home in Montana, where their relationship continues to develop. The following novels, Hunting Ground and Fair Game, continue to expand on their relationship amidst various trials and adversities brought on by different villains and enemies both from past and present.
By the way, the werewolves in Briggs's books are immortal in the sense that vampires are, so they'll live forever if no one bothers to cut the head or, remove the heart, something of that nature. So, in that sense, these werewolves could live for centuries, even millennia, which is actually a really cool concept that I really enjoy. Also, one of the better parts about this is how the werewolves aren't quite as neutered as they are in some other series I could mention. So anyway, onto the book. So a quick, very little spoiler overview of the book itself. The book starts off, Charles and Anna are having a minor disagreement about kids. It's really not giving too much away. It's given away in like the first 12 pages. But as this disagreement goes on, some other things happen. They go traveling, disappearances and murder ensues, and then at some point they figure out who it is, and of course by the end of it, they've resolved their slight disagreement with some minor compromise. It's pretty classic fashion. These series of books actually feature not just werewolves, but also vampires, witches, and the various other spell-casting types, as well as the Fae, which are a supernatural species that until I'd read this series I wasn't too familiar with, but they do feature quite prominently in the series. They're basically all the old folk tale magical creatures of sorts. Now to start with, Patricia Briggs is one of my favorite authors, arguably of all time, but particularly in the urban fantasy genre. This woman has some of the best writing prose I have ever read in the genre. She has great characters, great world building, and very concise prose, which is all very good things for me. This woman wastes very little time getting to the meat and bone of the story each and every book that she writes, and it's all very character-centric, which is another great thing. So after such a glowing review of the previous books, I'm sure you're expecting an equally glowing review about this book too. Yeah, not so much. I do have one issue with this book, and that is its length. Hardcover does not equal longer. See that print? Well, you might not be able to see it too well in this camera, but you see that print? That's a pretty big print for these pages. The first novel in this series was paperback. It was, I believe, somewhere in the ballpark of 250, maybe lesser pages than that. However, there was significantly more print on each page, so we ended up getting a much longer story for what seemed like a much smaller book. Here we have the opposite problem. Hardcover, bigger pages, doesn't equal more story. So even though we're paying for a hardcover book, which, by the way, this thing was $18, and that was before the discounts that I got on it. So even though we're paying for a hardcover copy of this book, we're paying for a little bit more than what we're getting in terms of the length of the book. Now, as I've said, this doesn't affect the three basic tenets of Briggs's writing, her characters, her world building, and the prose. The length of the book, does not affect that. However, it does show in the fact that this took me less than 6 hours to get through, and that wasn't even when I was reading the entire time. I'm a fast reader naturally, but it should take me longer than 6 hours to get through a book that's 200 plus pages. This tells me two things. One, that the book is a lot smaller than it appears to be, or at least shorter in length than it appears to be, and also that there's just not as much story to it as a result. Things happen in this book very quickly. We don't get a whole lot of character building with the new characters, but again, these are new characters that are around for maybe one book. They might have a cameo in a later book, but for now, we're not expecting them to have deep and complex character building here. So I'm not going to complain too much that they have a lack of character building because it's understandable. But at the same time, there's so little going on with our two main characters. This is urban fantasy with crime drama with a soup song of paranormal romance. So it's a little bit of a balancing act here to try to figure out which one is going to be more prominent from which book to the next. This one is very much a crime drama. Not too much of the paranormal romance in this one. As I said, the relationship between these two characters has been pretty well established, so there's not much need for them to have ridiculous arguments and meaningless spats all the time. There's really no need for it. So the fact that it's really not in here, not much in the way of their character development as a whole, isn't really shocking. But at the same time, it is somewhat missed because their chemistry is one of the cornerstones of this entire series. You believe that they have a relationship, no matter its somewhat questionable origins. You know, it's not like he can read her mind and stalks her while she sleeps. Hint, hint. Now, admittedly, there's other more important things going on, true. There's murders about, there's missing kids, there's all this really important stuff happening. But at the same time, the core dynamic of these characters is one of its most driving forces, in my opinion. So to not have it as much in this book definitely shows in the way that it reads and how long it took me to kind of get through it, because there was so little of Anna and Charles's natural banter, their back and forth, the natural flirting that they have, that actually makes it fun to read this because these two are actually really engaging characters. So for that to not be in there as much as I was at least hoping it would be, much less for the fact that it should have been in there, kind of sucks. And it kind of drains away from the fun of reading it. So perhaps that's why the book seemed like it took a little bit longer for me to get through than I was anticipating. Which is all well and good, but $18! $18 for a hardcover copy of a book that is just over 200 pages long, and took me about 6 hours to read without even reading it straight through. That's not good in my opinion. That's not a great sign as far as I'm concerned, not compared to her previous works anyway. So the fact that that's the case with this one is a little disappointing. This has slowly become my more favorite of the two series, for the simple fact that the Mercy series has been going on for so long, it's sort of getting rehashed and recycled just a little bit at this point. To be honest, I'm trying not to be biased here because of my love for Patricia Briggs and her previous novels, so I'm really trying to not look at this through rose-colored glasses. The thing is, though, is that the story sort of feels like it's beginning to slow down. It feels like we're hitting sort of that dry spell where a lot of authors at this point are kind of spinning their wheels for new ideas, for characters and for villains and things like that. In a way, Briggs is starting to repeat the mistakes made by, say, Charlaine Harris in the Sookie Stackhouse novels. Those novels got so repetitive towards the end. There was never really a compelling villain. All the bad things that happened just seemed contrived and useless. This, while not being contrived, it is perfectly set up by the events of the previous novel. It still feels a little forced, and I don't know if maybe that's just my perception. Maybe I was expecting more of this than I should have been, or maybe this just doesn't deliver the way it should be, but I just don't feel like this is her strongest work to date. I could be proven wrong later. This may actually turn out to be a big game changer somewhere down the road as far as some minor subplot that was going on here. I doubt it, but it's still possible, so I'm still going to hold out hope that maybe, in the grand scheme of things, this is actually going to turn out to be pretty well worthwhile, and hopefully will have been worth my time. So in any event, what's to say about this book in its entirety? It has all the same trademarks of the Patricia Briggs writing style, so is it still good? It is good in that sense. But as I said, the story somewhat lacks in it, in that it doesn't really feel like it's pushing the story forward as much as it should be. So, yeah, I guess I'll make that my rating. I guess this is going to be a paperback rating. Yeah, I know, right? I was kind of hoping this would be better too, but apparently for my first Bookworm review, I'm going to give a mediocre rating. Ta-da! Don't bother buying this in hardcover. It's not going to really be worth it and you're not missing anything. If you want to go buy it full price because you just can't wait to buy it like I did without watching a single review, because I didn't watch a single review for it, maybe I would have hesitated if someone else had had this opinion. Which is really sad to have to give that as my first review, especially for a Patricia Briggs book, but I'm going to give my honest opinions here. I know some people aren't going to like it, but tough. So yeah, if you're a die-hard fan, you're probably going to buy this new if you haven't already. But for those of you who are a little more on the fence and aren't sure if you want to commit to it when you maybe are pinching pennies and can't afford to do it, I would definitely recommend waiting a little bit. It won't kill you to wait. There's nothing really major that happens in this one that you just can't wait to read about. So really, the wait is not going to really deprive you of anything, especially as long as you avoid spoilers on the internet. Which, hi, no spoilers here, remember? So, if any of you have actually read the book and maybe disagree with me or just plain agree with me, please go ahead and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you guys and get a little feedback on that. Always good to hear from other folks and get a few other opinions on that one. And if you wouldn't mind hitting the subscribe button, wherever it is on the screen around here. So for my next review, I'm thinking we should skip down Nostalgia Lane a little bit. Oh yeah, I'm gonna go there. Until then, I'm just some critic, and I like talking about stuff. Catch you later.